Our New Testament lesson comes to us from the Gospel according to Matthew, chapter 17, verses 1 through 8. This is the word of the Lord. 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and his brother John and led them up a high mountain by themselves. And he was transfigured before them. And his face shone like the sun, and his clothes became dazzling white. Suddenly there appeared to them Moses and Elijah talking with him. Then Peter said to Jesus, "Lord, it is good for us to be here. If you wish, I will make 3 dwellings here, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." While he was still speaking, suddenly a bright cloud overshadowed them. And from the cloud a voice said, "This is my Son, the beloved. With him I am well pleased. Listen to him." When the disciples heard this, they fell to the ground and were overcome by fear. But Jesus came and touched them, saying, "Get up and do not be afraid." And when they looked up, they saw no one except Jesus himself alone. A word from the Lord for the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
Once upon a time, a group of disciples asked their teacher, "Does God work miracles?" And the teacher replied, "What do you mean by a miracle?" By miracle, do we mean what happened on the Mount of Transfiguration, where Jesus, in the presence of Peter and James and John, was transfigured before them, his face shining like the sun and his clothes becoming dazzling white? By miracle, do we mean Moses and Elijah having wandered through the pages of the Old Testament in order to seek out Jesus on the mountain and to talk with him there? Or by miracle, do we mean hearing a voice that thundered from a cloud to confirm the identity of the one in whose presence this trio of followers stood? Does God work miracles? A group of disciples asked their teacher. And the teacher replied, "What do you mean by a miracle?" Some people say a miracle is when God listens to the people and does something out of the ordinary. But we say it is a miracle when people actually listen to Jesus and they do something out of the ordinary by following his teaching. So perhaps the miracle of transfiguration is still unfolding. For in the midst of Jesus conversing with that pair of Old Testament prophets, Peter prematurely presented his preliminary proposal. He was pondering plans, opinions, and projections. He wanted to fulfill his agenda by marking that mystical moment on the mountain with a monument that would include 3 dwellings. But then the voice from heaven interrupted the apostles' impulsive proposition, saying, "This is my beloved Son. Listen to him." Listen to him, Peter, for when you set your mind on human things, as you are doing now, rather than divine things, you become a stumbling block and you reject the call of discipleship. Listen to him, Peter, for just as he enables the deaf to hear, he will also bless you with the ability to hear and to follow. Listen to him, Peter, when he bids you not to remain safely in the boat or to build monuments, but to dare to step out on faith, to move beyond what is safe and secure, to keep your eyes fixed on him, and to walk on water. Listen to him, Peter, when he tells you that if someone has sinned against you, you must forgive not 7 times, but 70 times 7. So Peter, listen to him. All you disciples, listen to him. For it is so much easier to build a monument than to follow Jesus. But Christ did not call you to create places of comfort. Jesus called you to leave your spaces of comfort and to follow him down the mountain into the valley of humanity in order to join him in transforming the world. Would it be a miracle if any of the disciples actually did listen to Jesus? In the mid-1950s, there was a young 26-year-old man, fresh out of seminary, who as a young father and an inexperienced pastor was just trying to figure out how to manage the details of parish ministry. Like many new graduates with theological training, he was probably more comfortable with the Old Testament prophets than with the church trustees. And he was perhaps wondering if his commitment to the faith would interfere with his commitment to his family. But when Rosa Parks decided to rest her weary body near the front of the city bus, chaos erupted in Montgomery, Alabama. And that 26-year-old pastor, Martin Luther King Jr., almost without his consent, was thrust into the leadership of a grassroots movement to promote civil rights in the United States. As he led the crusade, not only were threats raining upon him, but he also felt the grip of angry resistance as he was constantly followed and harassed. And he was even jailed for driving 5 miles over the speed limit. One evening around midnight, he sat in his kitchen while his wife and his young daughters slept. The telephone rang, and the person on the other end of the line said, "Boy, we are tired of you and your mess now. If you aren't out of this town in 3 days, we're going to blow your brains out and blow up your house." He began to stare at an untouched cup of coffee and tried to think of a way out. A way to quietly surrender leadership and resume the serene life of scholarship he had planned. He was unsettled and scared and angry. And as he found himself wrestling and murmuring with God, he bowed down over that cup of coffee and he offered a prayer to God. And he said, "Lord, I'm down here trying to do what's right. I think I'm right. And I think the cause that we represent is right. But Lord, I must confess that I'm weak now. I'm faltering. I'm losing my courage." And at that point, Martin Luther King Jr. heard a voice. He heard the voice. And the voice said, "Martin, stand up for righteousness. Stand up for justice. Stand up for truth. And lo, I will be with you, even until the end of the world." It was the crystallizing moment of his life. And even 3 nights later, when the phone caller's threat became a reality and a bomb exploded on his front porch, Martin never forgot the power of those words. The reassurance of that voice, a voice that echoed again and again and again in his soul, a voice to which he listened in order to transform the world. Indeed, perhaps the real miracle of the Transfiguration is not what happened on the mountain, but what would happen off the mountain. Would anyone actually listen to Jesus? After all, when we listen to Jesus, we are not called to follow the way of the rational world. We are called to embrace and to share the irrational love of God, so that we may join Jesus in shaping the world according to God's design. You see, when we listen to Jesus, we not only see Jesus in clothes that are dazzling white, but we also see a new world that is possible, where the poor in spirit are blessed with the kingdom of heaven, where the meek inherit the earth, where those who hunger and thirst for righteousness will be satisfied. Even now, that voice is speaking to us. For if we have concluded that equality and discrimination, food and famine, war and peace are only political issues and the church shouldn't get involved, then listen to him. Or when we are tempted to hate our fellow human beings and initiate violence over issues of race or religion, we listen to him. Or when we, for the pursuit of profits, are enticed to exploit or rape the earth that sustains us, we should turn away from that kind of thinking and instead listen to Him. When we hear the cacophonous voices of the world refusing to acknowledge the beauty of life, don't listen to those voices. Listen to Him. When we are seduced into seeking revenge against the people who may criticize us, and we salivate at every opportunity to return evil for evil, don't give in to that temptation. Listen to Him. When we encounter the people who enjoy using the Bible as a weapon in order to beat into submission anyone who disagrees with them, then let's challenge that position and listen to Him. When our minds are flooded with apathy and indifference and negativity, and it is constantly reinforced in the news that all hope is gone, don't listen to that garbage. Listen to Him. When we hear people running down the church because nothing is going right and money is short and energy is depleted, what are we doing in listening to those people? Don't listen to them. Listen to Him. Listen to Him, the voice from heaven announces. But will we listen to Jesus, who tells us that we are the light of the world, and therefore we should not build a monument to house the light, but instead we should move into the darkness and illumine the world with the life-giving truth that we have heard. Listen to Him, the voice from heaven declares. But will we listen to Jesus, who summons us to take up our cross and follow Him in giving our lives away in loving service, recognizing that we catch a glimpse of Jesus, not just in transfigured glory, but also when we give food to the hungry and drink to the thirsty. For when we have served the least of these, we have also served Jesus. Listen to Him, the voice from heaven says, for He will teach us how we can participate with Him in transforming the world and bringing it as close to God's vision as we possibly can. So once upon a time, a group of disciples asked their teacher, "Does God work miracles?" And the teacher replied, "What do you mean by miracle?" Some people say it is a miracle when God listens to the people and does something out of the ordinary. But we say it is a miracle when people actually listen to Jesus and they do something out of the ordinary by truly following His teaching. And for those of us who have ears to hear, will we hear? Amen. Now, as we